Thankful and so very blessed to have all of you folks joining us for our afternoon session. It is my true honor to go ahead and introduce this young, handsome gentleman. If you did not get a chance to check out the keynote this morning, those will be references. You folks are free to kind of check that out. And this gentleman, of course, made such an amazing impact, gave us so much thought and Ike. We're excited, and it really did help ground us for the rest of the day. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Anakala Pono Shim. Let's give him a round of applause, everybody.
Aloha,
Awesome
everyone.
job.
Um, Thank you, Kaleo and Chad, and all of you who are joining us this afternoon. Um, the air has kind of the West Coast winds that they were expecting are blown in, so the smoke is kind of cleared. It's really nice, about to rain. But Kaleo, do you have my PowerPoint that we'll be sharing today?
I can access it on a Kala. If you want to drive it, you're welcome to drive it on your side too. If you want to just open it and then we can share your screen on that side if you want to do that. Or if you want me to drive it, that's fine too.
Yeah, if you have it, if you will drive it, because I didn't load it. Um,
No problem, Uncle. As you begin, I'll go ahead and start and cue
okay,
all that up for us.
okay. So everyone, the title of this breakout is How Do We? And the How Do We is actually the continuation of E Ohana Ho. You know, how do we E Ohana Ho?
Can I hear?
You guys can't hear me. Can you hear me? Chad, can you hear me okay?
That's so hot.
Okay.
Remember, friends, if you're signing on, we're going to need you to mute your microphone. Please mute your microphone if you're signing on. Mahalo.
So the question about how do we is really in response to the title of the talk, E Ohana Ho. You know, how do we get back to that? But before maybe we get into my presentation, which doesn't need to take long, um, usually when I'm done with talks, I have real terrible Q&A, terrible. People don't ask questions after I'm done. They're just silent because they're kind of ruminating. So instead of doing that, usually it takes a few hours as they cycle through and they find their hidden objects. Then it's a good time to chat. So I did want to open it up to anybody, Chad, if you can help, who might have a comment or a question or something that they want to share, and love to hear from you.
Yeah,
I want,
I'll
yeah,
be
go ahead.
watching the chat on Akala and then make sure that you know. I'll let you know as questions come up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anakala, just to let you know, also, I'm queued up and ready whenever you want me to
Okay,
show you. Just give me the
wonderful,
word.
wonderful, thank you. I think Javier was in early and he wanted to, he had some thoughts or something. Is Javier available? You're still muted, Javier? Yeah,
Perfect.
aloha.
Aloha. I just wanted to hear what this talk was about. Was kind of my question. So
Mm,
I'm just here waiting and waiting to sponge it all up. Mahalo.
mahalo, Javier. Okay, I guess what we'll do is then we'll just launch. So I shared with you about Auntie Pilahi. I shared with you some of the things that she shared with me. And it was when we went on this walk, and I'm going to preface things. You know, people sit back and they hear me tell this story, and they're like, "Wow, you know, that was such a powerful moment in 1976 when we went for this walk." And the truth is, it wasn't. It was a walk, and it wasn't any different than the kupuna that I share with anybody else. Um, for some reason, I was this child that was always taken and spent time with elders. So it wasn't like this is the most gratifying or significant moment because it's really a collection of it, of moments. Um, it wasn't until maybe the 2000s that I really started to think about how significant the talk that we had. Um, it was only one time, you folks. It was never again. I never called Auntie Pilahi a teacher of mine because she was my auntie. And I didn't go back to talk again. It was one time. And when we would see each other at family gatherings, she would just ask me, how am I? how am I doing? So I want to provide that kind of context that we all of us are just collections, are not just, but we are collections of so much that has been planted in by many, many people. So one of the most significant things that she shared was aloha in the way that she shared it with me, that I had not heard her share it with other people. So next slide, Khalil. You can go to the next slide. I think everybody. So this was Auntie Pilahi's prophecy that she publicly declared, but privately she was sharing with many before 1970. But in 1970, she declared this. And we were continuously reminded, even up until my dad's last breath, he said, don't forget what Auntie Pilahi said. We're here. But I want you folks to focus on two words in this quote, because I've heard many people quote this quote in the past year and a half. And the two words I want you to focus on are key, K-E-Y. It's used twice. Many people, I think, look at this quote or hear it and recite it, and they say Hawaii is the answer and aloha is the answer, and that's not what she said. She said it's a key. And what do keys do? Keys lock and they unlock things. And so I really believe that the foundation of this quote, of this prophecy, is that in the 21st century, the world will search for peace and they'll look to Hawaii because Hawaii has the key, and that key is aloha. That aloha is a key that unlocks us, unlocks ourselves, and also allows us to put things away that we need to put away. So, Kael, next slide, please. So what you see here, and folks consider this an acronym, Akahai Lokahi Olu Olu Ha'aha'a Ahonui, is the definitions that she provided on the foundations of aloha. What you see in black is what's in state statute. It's in the aloha poster. And she shares the literal translation, kindness, to be expressed with tenderness. So the literal translation, which could be defined as the ho'opukaku, and then the kauna, the expression, that beautiful poetic side, is the expression. What you see is her interpretations that she gave to everyone else. What you see in red is what Auntie Pilahi spoke with me about when we went on that walk. When she said, I'm going to share with you the deeper meanings of what it means to live Hawaii. And it expressed about that noahuna. So she didn't begin with akahai though. She began with ahonui with me. And the reason why she began with ahonui, she said, because it always begins with the ha. If you're Japanese, it begins
File
with the ki.
extension not accepted. Only file extension of BMP, JPEG, JPEG are allowed. Okay.
Okay, so
Can we please ask whoever to mute their microphones in the background, please? Kalamai. Thank you.
Mahalo. So, ahonui, ha'aha'a. And the ha, because it always begins with our ha. That is our energy, that is our source. It comes from our center. Chinese, they refer to it as chi. Japanese refer to it as ki or ki-ai. And she told me it's all the same, but we recognize it with our breath. So Auntie Pilahi began with ahonui. And where others know the interpretation of ahonui as patience, Auntie Pilahi told me ahonui means waiting for the moment. So I am waiting for the moment because the moment is coming. And it might not come in my lifetime, but it will come, and we are always preparing and prepared for the moment. So she said, you, pointing to me, are ahonui. If you think about ahonui in the literal translation of patience, what does patience look like? But in the interpretation that she gave me, what does ahonui look like? She said, an eagle, a hawk, and a shark are never patient. They are always waiting. They are ready. They are watching. They are present. And that is ahonui. Then ha'aha'a, other people know as humility. She told me ha'aha'a is to empty myself, to go to nothing. Because when we are ha'aha'a, we can receive. Only when we're empty can we receive. I've shared this story of I had purchased this holster for my phone, and bought it in California on a trip to visit my daughter. And the reason why I bought this holster was because the salesperson told me, you know, what's good about this one is if it ever falls out of your pocket or your hip, it's not going to shatter because of this type of holster. So I work on Bishop Street. My office is downtown. One day I'm standing on the corner of Bishop Street and my phone falls out the holster. And you know the kid who sold me that thing, he lied to me. It shattered. And the sucking kid, you lied to me. But I had insurance, so I was getting a new phone the next day. All I had to do is claim. And so I had a new phone, but I have a problem. And the problem is I don't know how to transfer data. And my phone numbers, the names in my phone, my ringtones, my music, everything's in this phone. So I'm really concerned, how do I transfer the data? Because I don't want to lose it, right? Well, that night I went to Walmart to go get a new phone for my daughter. She needed one. And the sales clerk looks at my phone and he says, Uncle, your phone is pretty bad, man. You need a new phone. I got a new one coming tomorrow. Hey, brother, you know how to transfer data? So he says, let me look your phone. So I give him my phone so he can look my phone. So he looked my phone and he starts to talk to his colleague and he's going back and forth and he's conversing with them. Pretty soon he says, okay, I got it. Okay, so when you get your new phone, you take this chip out of your phone, charge up the battery for the other one, put this chip inside. When it powers up, I want you to go through this sequence. At one point, it's going to say, prompt you to sync. When you hit sync, all of your data is going to transfer. And I said, okay, can you do that one more time? Because I will forget. It goes through it second time. Okay. So the next day, the phone arrives. You know what, you guys, I'm so scared. I don't even open the box because I'm afraid I'm going to lose everything. After 5 days, so if you've ever had a replacement phone for insurance, they threaten you. You have 10 days to send back the old phone that's broken, or they're going to charge you for the second phone. So they have to threaten us so that we will do what we are supposed to do. So on the 5th day, I'm feeling threatened, so I better do it. I go through the process. I hit sync. And when I hit sync, I'm watching all of these names come up. And everybody in my phone from A through L is there. I said, sucking kid, where's M through Z? Anyway, I figure I better go do it again. Maybe I did it wrong. I hit sync the second time. Now everybody A through L in my phone 2 times. Sucking guy. What happened? But maybe it's my problem. So, when you go through these processes, I'm not good at IT. I hit that other option. It's the other one. The one that you can import more. I hit that one. I hit sync. Now, everybody who wants to be friends with me on LinkedIn and Facebook now coming on my phone. And these people are not my friends. I don't know who these people are. They want to be friends with me, but they're all coming on my phone. and I'm afraid the phone's going to blow up. And all of a sudden, I get a prompt that says, SIM card is what? Everything stops. It says, SIM card is full. Okay. Nothing's coming on my phone anymore. Until what? Until I empty it. See, we understand that over here. But I don't know that we understand that over here. And I think that's why she said, I need to be quiet and practice. Because it can't be a theory. Ha'a is to empty yourself, to go to a place of emptiness, and then I can receive. So after she shared ha'a and ahonui, she faced me and she did this. She just ha me. And she said, ha, the moment of emptiness. See it? If you see those two definitions, ha is the moment of emptiness. And she said the significance of that is that all connection is preceded by a moment of emptiness. If we want to connect with people, we must first establish a moment of emptiness. Now, notice what we've been taught, or what we observe, that today the process is a lot. Whoever's got the biggest microphone wins. It's who's got the loudest voice, and we use all kinds of things to raise our voice. Laws, money, marches, social media. But what Auntie Pilahi was doing was she was teaching me something else. She said, it's not the power in who can make more noise, it's who can silence the noise. Who has the power to silence the noise? And it comes from ha. Then she went to Akahai, and Akahai is grace. And grace is with white gloves, she said. Because I was a child, I think she was illustrating so I could understand. White gloves. And she says, so you leave people cleaner than when you found them. That's what Akahai is. And that's where the definition of grace is. You leave people or things better than you found them. Then she went to Olu Olu. And Olu Olu is to be gentle. And she said, gentle is like you're carrying a baby. Here not to bruise or scar the baby. I think we're getting some feedback. We're not here to bruise or scar this baby. Gentle enough to carry this baby. Now, all of these have hina and ku, or yin and yang. What most people know is the yin or the hina, that very gentle, the ethereal, the female side of us. But they also have the ku. And Olu Olu to me has the most powerful expression of the ku. Olu Olu is gentle. At the same time, very strong. Gentle but strong. And she said, you're gentle enough to carry this baby. You're strong enough not to drop it. So they all have these dualities of it. So that's Olu Olu. And then she ended with Lokahi. Notice, this isn't sequential, but true to our people, they're riddles. So other people know Lokahi as unity. If you really think about what unity is to make one. That's Ho'okahi. So the problem isn't Hawaiian, the problem is English. We don't necessarily understand what we're saying, but Lokahi is unbroken, connected, already whole, already full, connected. And she said, we all enter this universe, Lokahi, when we're born. But our systems teach us we're broken. Our political system, our religious systems, economics, education, that we're all broken, and we spend the rest of our time negotiating or conversing or trying to collaborate to make ourselves one. And that's when she told me, you will be a storyteller, but when you tell your stories, it's not to win Amber to me or Allison to me. She said, you're the old kind of storyteller. that when you tell your stories, it comes up inside of people and they go, ah, it's me. That's me. They experience the lokahi. They've experienced the connection. So this is the foundation that she had shared with me, and what I felt people most predominantly wanted to hear when I first started sharing in 2010. Auntie Pilahi told me that day, she says, I only want you to practice. You're not allowed to share. So consider this, yeah. Here's a child who a kupuna is taken on the side for a walk, and she says, I'm sharing with you this knowledge. You cannot share it with anyone else, but I want you to practice. And what Auntie Pilahi did not do is she did not tell me how to practice. She just said, I want you to practice, but I couldn't talk to anybody. And in this past year, I've had some resolution about why that is so significant to what I do today. Because I couldn't talk to any person, specifically an adult, and ask them, how do you practice ha'aha'a? How do you practice akahai? Because I couldn't speak to an adult, there was no adult to tell me, you cannot, you just live it. There was nobody to tell me cannot. And because I was a child, I believed that any kupuna who was telling me something was significant. Because of what Auntie Pilahi shared, there was a way to practice. And although she did not tell me how, I needed to learn how. And so, you folks, what's really crazy to me is I developed exercises for this that are metaphorically similar to when we saw the movie Karate Kid and Daniel-san asked Mr. Miyagi, can you teach me? I want to learn how to fight. I want to learn how to defend myself. At first, Mr. Miyagi says, you don't need. But after him continually, just hobbing him and trying to get him to teach him, when Mr. Miyagi finally agreed, what does he do? He says, okay, sand my floor. So he starts to sand the floor. Yep, wax on, wax off, wash my car, paint the fence. And Daniel thought this man was taking advantage of him because this man is making me do all of his chores. But really what he was doing was he was giving him the exercises that would allow him to do what he wanted to do. And I believe today, so many people, they tell us what we need to know, but they don't know the exercises. And for some weird way, I figured out if I do this, I'm going to be empty. If I'm doing this, I'm going to be ahonui. If I do this one, olu olu comes up. Lokahi comes up. That there were definite exercises. And so for the past 44 years, I've been practicing exercises that produces an outcome. It was in 2014, 6 years ago, when I was flying to Seattle. It was 6 months after I had my kidney surgery where I donated a kidney to a friend. And I was flying to Seattle, and before I got on the plane, an article came up from the Hawaii Business Magazine, and it was an article that said, the title was 7 Views from the Top Leadership. And it was a conversation with 7 of the highest level executives or CEOs in Hawaii. And people who know me know I'm not really interested in studying other people's perspectives on leadership, because I think for me, it's a lot of recycled knowing. But there was one man who was in that article, his name is Colbert Matsumoto, that I was very interested in because Colbert, he's a friend, he's also a Zen master, he's also a martial artist. And Colbert was the CEO of Island Insurance. And he also was the court-appointed master during the Broken Trust times. So I have a lot of aloha and respect for Colbert. And so I started reading what Colbert was saying. And at one point, the author asked everyone, who are the leaders you most admire in Hawaii today? And I started to laugh because even how you answer this question will reveal what kind of leader you are. Will anybody throw down a name? So Governor Ariyoshi says, Governor Burns, and I just, that's not going to help our people. He's a family friend, but he's not helping by saying that. But I'm sure he feels real strong sentiment to that. I know he does. The second person was the former CEO of Central Pacific Bank, John Dean, and John Dean says, well, for banking, Walter Dodds was a good leader. But I had good bosses and bad bosses, and I learned from both. So he's not going to throw down. And the next person was Colbert, and Colbert said, who do I consider to be visionary leaders in Hawaii today? He said, I'll give you 3 names. And I just started laughing. There you go. That's leadership. So I'm flipping through my phone, and the first person he named was Nainoa Thompson. And of course, I agreed. And he explained about why he believes Nainoa is such a powerful leader is because that metaphor and symbolism of what the Va'a means to us and the world at large is a powerful visionary. I turned the page, you guys, and the next name was mine, and it blew my mind. I never, ever thought I would see that. Never expected it, never worked for it. And it took me back, like, huh. So when I returned to Hawaii and I went to breakfast with Colbert, he said,
So that's why I was on the road.
I know you have a process for how you've developed yourself, and I want you to consider how you would teach other people, because people want to learn. How do you have this mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional discipline? People want to learn. So I want you to really think, can you train other people? And it was maybe about 3 months later that I started my first cohort. And I call it the Higher Skills Academy. And some of my students or friends are in this right now. And it really was an experiment, because how do you teach something that nobody taught you, but you never shared it with anyone? It was just your own exercises. So I started with a group of 9, and I had to choose people that I felt could be good teachers for me. They would be good listeners, but also they would have the patience to endure me not knowing how to teach something. And something I'm concerned about in education is that people, because they know something, they think they can teach it. And I think that's a very dangerous assumption. Just because we know something doesn't mean we know how to connect it. So I had to find people who could help me to learn how to teach it. And I had this cohort. A very good friend, James Koshiba, had heard about it. And after 1 year of holding this group together, one day he bravely asked me, he says, can I interview the cohort? Because I've been hearing so much about these 9. So one afternoon on a Saturday, we all sat down for 2 hours, and I just shut up for 2 hours and just let James talk with everybody. And it was about a month later that he was debriefing with me, and he says, after experiencing what I've experienced, now I don't know what anybody else is doing in leadership development anymore. He said, I have never seen this before. And he said, I want to learn so bad. And so that's become what has been the foundation of sharing aloha the way that Auntie Bilahi had placed upon me, and then the exercises that I developed for myself. I will tell you that I stopped counting at 30 cohorts, over 500 people around the world. And this is not for sale. I don't sell this. I live it. And so this is what I apply that has provided the quote unquote what other people consider success in my life or influence. Everything I'm sharing with you is at the core of how I live my life and the impacts that it makes. So I don't need to sell my knowledge. It's applied. It's a gift, and it's a gift to our people, just like that song that Moon wrote. And all of these interpretations are in the song. So can you, next slide, Khalil? So after she had shared those words with me, that's the question she asked me. She said, so in life, can you find what it means to respond with aloha? Can you find it? When things are good, what can you respond with aloha? How? She said, when things are not good, what does it mean to respond with aloha? Can you find it? And the objective is to connect, not correct. Seek to connect first. And so that has been a pair of glasses that I've worn since 1976, searching for this answer. And I think I'm getting better in my life as I get older, that I'm becoming more refined. But this is a lifelong journey for me. Can I find what it means to respond with aloha when things are good and when things are not good? I'm going to just share one more simple story that might be able to help you understand this. And then let's just have a discussion. About a month ago, another one of my students and friends, her name is Kelly Lopez. She's the executive director for AARP. She called me about an issue, and then after we were finished talking about it, she said, you know, Pono, it's so hard to get kupuna to register and to sign up for SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, you know, food stamps. She said it is so hard. 50% of them are qualified and they won't even sign up, and it's free food. And I said, I understand, Kelly, and it is hard. You're right. She said, you know, so we try to educate them. How do we change it? Now, if you think about the question that Auntie Pilahi asked me, can I find the aloha response? So I said, you know, Kelly, see, if we're coming from connection, this isn't hard. But if we're coming from correction, this is really hard. And a cryptic term for correction is education. So if you look at our education system, so much of it is about correcting people. So because you have an assessment of these kupuna, and what is the assessment? She said the assessment is there's so much shame that they won't accept the food. They won't register. I said, okay, so there's the assessment. And because that's the assessment, now what we need to do is correct them, which means we need to educate them that this food is free, that it's good for them, there's a benefit. She said, notice it's all about correction. So this is what I would do. It's not hard. The first thing I want to recognize is I have a different assessment than you. Your assessment is these people are shamed. My assessment is who's the audience? These are kupuna who are givers. All of their life, they dedicate their life to giving others. That's who they are. They're not takers, they're givers. And so people trying to educate a giver into being a taker, I'm sorry, you're going to fail, because you're not going to change a giver into being a taker. That's not who they are. So you're just going to get frustrated, waste money, and waste time, and the food's not going to get where it needs to go to. So what does connection look like? Aho nui, I'm waiting for the moment. The moment came. I go empty because that's when I can receive and have a proper assessment. And then with white gloves, akahai, and gentle touches, olu olu, time to lokai, time to reconnect. So what I would do is, I know you dedicated your entire life to caring for others, to feeding others. And that's what you spent your entire lifetime doing. And so you now are in a position for us to extend the gratitude for what you have spent your whole life doing, to share a little bit of what you've already invested in everyone else. Back to you. And someday in my life, I'm probably not going to be in a position where I will be able to care for myself as well. And hopefully when that time comes, maybe there'll be somebody to care for me too. And Kelly, you just said, wow. See, it's not hard when we come from aloha, not from correction. And that's what is the foundation to me. The objective is e ohanoho, but how we get there is through aloha. And that's why, how do we? It's this practice. And it's a practice that each person will develop themselves as we share. So, okay, you can do the next slide. There you go. And now let's stop sharing and let's open it up to conversation or to some of the chats. Anybody,
Okay,
anything they want to ask or to
perfect
share?
opportunity. This is a perfect opportunity to go ahead and write any questions that you might have for Anakala. We know that some of them that might have been asked prior. We'll make sure that Uncle gets that at some point in time. As a friendly reminder, for those of us that aren't asking questions, if you could mute your mics behind, so to prevent some of the echoing sound, and of course, we're just gonna ask questions. So if you start to put them in there, Uncle, I have a first question from Mary.
Yep.
Looking for a way to connect to parallel or other cultures and living language concepts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary, for that question. Let's see, how do I get back? Well, I can't see you guys. Hopefully you can still see me. So in 2015, a very good friend of mine who at the time was working for the Hawaii Tourism Authority, he was a COO. He had just gone there. He had traveled around the Orient, and he said, you know, Pono, I need to meet with you, and you need to go to Japan and China and Korea and go share aloha with them. And I asked him why, because I know it's marketed, but why do I need to go? And he started to talk to me about how their children live, how children in Japan on the first day of school, it's one of the scariest days of the year for families because that's when the highest suicides occur. And children step in front of trains because they don't want to go to school. He started telling me about that the Japanese people are not, they're not having babies. They're not making babies. They're not populating Japan. And within 50 years, their population is expected to decline from 125 million to 80 million. And that is total economic disaster if you start to see that kind of decline of a population. Because there's no backfill. People are not having babies, and they're trying to solve these with laws and with tax credits. So I started to study, and I met with a bunch of focus groups. And over a period of 6 months, I started to deconstruct how did the Japanese people get to this place and why is aloha significant? Remember the prophecy of the key. Finally, I kind of gathered all of it and I understood. So I went to Japan and I had a meeting with 27 media writers in tourism. So these are people who report in magazines and promote tourism. And I started to share the same stories I shared with you today about aloha and Auntie Pilahi and I. And at one point, I started to say, you know, our heritage is same. So Mary, same. And they thought I was being gratuitous. And they were smiling, and, oh yeah, okay. And then at one point, and the next point, I showed them a picture of the ahupua'a. And you know, the people of Japan, many of them, they love our culture so much. So they said, oh yeah, the afupua'a, we love the afupua'a. And they do, they love our afupua'a. and they understand it because they've studied our culture. And then I asked them, what did you have? And they said, we didn't have. And I said, okay. So my next slide was a picture of something called the Satoyama, Satoyama. And they looked at it. Sato is the plains, Yama is the mountains. Get it? From the mountains to the plains. And they looked at it and they were shocked because it was an ahupua'a, but instead of lo'i, there were rice paddies. And I said, same. The same values that built the ahupua'a are the same values that built the Satoyama. And the reason why I think the people of Japan love Hawaii so much, and they love our culture, and there's 2.7 million hula dancers, when maybe we got 25,000 in Hawaii. 2.7 million. That's not a fad, that's a movement. And I said, the reason why I think you folks love Hawaii so much is you think the way we live and who we are is the most beautiful thing in the whole world. Because we remind you of you. That when America blew you up, we blew you up. And you forgot how beautiful you were. And the reason why you love us so much is because we just remind you of you. And these 26 of the 27 media writers just started crying. One of them rushed out the door, and she was the only one I wanted to talk to because she was taking pictures, she was recording, she wasn't getting emotional at all. She was the one I thought, oh man, I sure didn't connect with her. Rushed out the door. But the others, I couldn't chase her because they were swarming me. So the next day, as I was getting ready with my friends who work in tourism, they were taking me to Osaka to go and do 2 more talks. My friend Eric Takahata said, hey, brah, you're in Yahoo News this morning. I said, what's Yahoo News? He said, that's Japan CNN. I said, what do you mean I'm in Yahoo News? He said, you know that lady that walked out first yesterday? He said, yeah. Well, she wrote a full article on everything about you and Auntie Pilahi, and it's all over Japan today. So she did connect, and she wrote the article, and it went all over Japan. But that's my answer to your question, Mary.
Mahalo, Anakala. We have about 7 more minutes, everybody. We have a few more questions that will jump out, and of course, please don't feel like your questions won't get to Uncle. Whatever questions that we do not have time for today, we will gather them and we'll send them over to Uncle, and at his convenience, he'll have the opportunity to peruse and look at them. And of course, depending on his amount of time, he'll be able to reach back with some of you. If you guys do have questions that would like to be forwarded, you guys are welcome to forward it to ohanaengagement@kspe.edu, and of course, just CC Uncle Pono's session so we know our team knows exactly who you want to forward it to, and we'll make that happen. So Uncle, we have 2 questions. We probably have time for 2 questions. The first one being from Lori. She also said mahalo nunui for providing so much, Anakala. But her question is, do we devise our own exercises like you did?
I I won't encourage that. I would rather share the exercises that I have discovered as I've done with other people. So if folks want to learn, and the only restriction on me is timing right now, because I've got, I think, besides my all cohort, I've got like 7 going on right now. One is an international cohort, 3 women from Japan, a woman from London, a group. But I would love to share with all of you. It wouldn't be fair. How do we? And I don't teach and I don't share. So anyone who's interested, maybe we can figure out a way, Kaleo, to hui everyone, and then let's have a cohort with whomever wants to, and we teach them the exercises so that they can practice, and then they can teach other people the exercises to e ohana.
for even offering that. Yes, that's something that if people are interested in, I'm sure our team can set up at a later time based on Uncle's availability. But yes, thank you so much for reaching out. We have time for we have one more question. And again, if you guys do have questions that are going to go unanswered, please go ahead and email them to ohanaengagement@kspe.edu and title them, or just make it Uncle Pono's breakout, just so our team knows that we're just going to go. And again, Sandra says, mahalo. We have a comment from Sandra. She says, how do we continue in a system that continues to have a Western way of educating? And I come from a way of sharing my knowing through connection and not the correction. How do I hold on to the values given by my kupuna in a system that don't come from that same place?
Good. So I would say bring it. I live in that system that you just described, but I didn't come to Bishop Street to have an address. I came to be transformative. And everything I'm sharing is what I do. When I took over this organization, it was one of the most bankrupt companies in Hawaii, and they chose a guy who had no economic development background to take over this bankrupt organization. And the only thing I could lean on was what I shared with you. And what they chose to do is they chose, the board of directors in their own wisdom said, we don't need an economist, we need a healer. So they ended up hiring a healer. They said, Hawaii needs more healers than we need economists. Now, I didn't come to prove that my culture was relevant. I knew it was the answer. And so that's what I could bring. And the example I'll give you is 3 months after I took over, we're so bankrupt, we had a meeting with over 30 of the top leaders in Hawaii, a half-day retreat. At the time, I had 14 board members, and the reason why they showed up was they were too afraid not to show up. That's meaning self-interest. There's your Western perspective. Some of them are pals of mine. One is Nainoa's brother, Eric Martinson. His wife is my classmate. And so when in this retreat, everyone has asked, what does this organization need to become? So the first person says, well, the champion for higher ed. She was provost of University of Hawaii, of course. Next person said, champion for early ed. She worked on Race to the Top. The next person, he worked on high-tech tax credits. So he says the reestablisher of Act 221. The convener of labor, the champion for clean energy, the reestablisher of agriculture, the connector to the military, bridge to the visitor industry. Get an idea? Everybody sharing their stuff. And I'm thinking over there, man, I am the smallest guy in this room, not just physically. These are the most powerful people in Hawaii. And eventually when they get to me, there's nothing left on the menu. So they finally went around the whole room and then they got to me and I was last and they said, okay, you're the CEO. These are our leaders. You've heard everybody. What do you want to become? What do you need to become? I'm waiting for the moment. The moment has come. I have to go empty so I can receive. What's the aloha response? So I sat there for a moment and I said, I kind of just want to be the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. The rest of you in a war. You come in my room, you put your weapons down. You don't put your weapons down, get out. This is unacceptable behavior. I am here to talk about how we take care of Hawaii and our people. Don't bring your weapons in my room. And we went from 14 directors to 12. 2 quit. They left Hawaii. They were not supposed to be in Hawaii. And within 3 months, I had 30 board members from 12 to 30. And we have an organization unlike anybody else's. And so I didn't change anybody. I brought what I am and who I am, and it transformed the whole relationship. And that's why I believe we're such a successful organization today. Thanks for the question.
Oh, mahalo nui, Uncle. So full of thank you for all your ike and knowledge. I mean, we're talking about exercises to development outcomes and connection versus correction. And of course, just giving it our best. So mahalo, Uncle, for your time and all your ike manal. We truly are blessed to have you share this space with us today. As a quick reminder